Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video I'm going to show you guys how to play Fauna, the animal trivia game. This is not your typical trivia game. In fact, there is no questions in this game whatsoever. In fact, this is a very different game from a normal trivia game, and it is super fun, and it even feels like a normal board game. So let me show you guys how to play this. Now, I've already played this several times, and I didn't think it needed a how to play video because it is a very easy game, but I thought I'd do it anyways because I like this game so much. So anyways, so in this game, you basically, every player is going to get 6 cubes of their color, okay? And they use these cubes to basically guess their answers for the animal that we're learning about, basically, okay? And the player who can reach the end as far as scoring is concerned wins the game. So there's like 120 points you could get potentially if you're playing a 3-player game, and it's whoever has the most points at the end of the game that wins, but someone could trigger the end of the game by making it to 120. But anyways, so in this game we're going to have an animal. We're going to do one animal at a time, and these are double-sided, by the way, and this is only half of the cards, so you could play this probably 50 times before you finally get through all of the animals. So anyways, so first of all we have this giant pangolin, okay? And you'll notice it lives in 4 areas, and we're also going to be working on its weight, its length, and its tail length. So in this game, we can get victory points for guessing certain things about the animal. And it's definitely different for each animal. Some don't have very long tails, and so you won't score their tail length. Sometimes you won't score their length. Sometimes you won't score their weight even. So it just depends on the animal. But the areas are always going to be in every game. They're always going to live in at least one area. In fact, we have a scoring table here that says there are some animals that even only live in one area on the entire map. Okay? And if you guess correctly, you can get a lot of points, okay? If it was just one area, okay? If it was several areas, like if it was 17 areas or more, then you're not going to get very many points for guessing right because it can live, you know, in so many different areas on the planet. Okay? So basically, just like in most games, there's a turn order. And so one player goes first, and then, you know, starting with that player, you do clockwise just like normal in most games, and everyone takes a turn guessing where they think it might live. Or they can also guess its weight. They think they know how much it weighs, or if they think how long it is, or if they think, you know, its tail length, how long its tail is. They can guess whichever the one they want to do, okay? So, for example, let's say Green thinks that the giant pangolin lives in Congo Basin, okay? And let's say Purple here thinks it lives in the Horn of Africa, for instance. And Red thinks, you know what, there's already a couple of cubes on there, but no one's guessing its weight. So let's say they think it weighs like 40 to 100 pounds, maybe, perhaps. You know, and then it goes back to Green. And Green can guess. And they can guess as many cubes as they have. They can guess with their cubes, okay? So you start with 6 cubes, but you might not have 6 cubes in the second round based on, well, their guesses. So, but let's just say Green thinks that perhaps it weighs 20 to 40 pounds, for instance. And then maybe Purple thinks its tail length is going to be like, oh, I don't know, 2 to 3 feet, maybe, you know, something like that. And then Red finally decides, you know what, I think I'm going to put it on the Rift Valley, because maybe they think it lives in the Rift Valley, right? Now, you can keep going, or you can choose to pass when it's your turn. The problem is, if you place out a cube and it does not score you any points, then you lose the cube, and you won't have it for the next round, probably. So there is definitely some disadvantages to just placing out cubes everywhere to score as many points as you think is possible. If you ever end up guessing all of your cubes, and every single one of your cubes is incorrect, you lose all of your cubes. But for the next round, if you have 0 cubes or less than 3 cubes, then you will get up to 3 cubes. So if you had like only 2 cubes left, for instance, for the second round, well, you would get 1 extra cube, so you have 3 cubes for the next round. So you'll always have at least 3 cubes for every single animal. But still, with only 3 cubes, that does mean you'll have a limited amount of guesses, while other players might have more cubes than you. So that's the disadvantage to a lot of incorrect answers and placing out a lot of cubes for lots of random guesses, because you're just not sure on most of these animals. Now, maybe perhaps somebody who knows a lot about animals might have an advantage in this game, and I am definitely someone who would have an advantage in this game, but I have not won this game that many times. I've played this like 6 times now, and I've only won twice. So 4 other games I lost. Okay? So just because I know a lot about animals doesn't mean that I'm going to win this game, because, there's a lot of potential luck involved. There's also the possibility that maybe it's an animal that you know where it lives and everybody else knows where it lives, but you're going last because every time you are done with an animal, you move on to the next animal, turn order rotates. So the person who went first won't be going first next round. And so there was an opportunity where I knew exactly where the animal lived and everybody else did, but I was going last, and they all took all the best spots because I was going last. And they all got the best points, and I got the least amount of points. And that's how I lost. And so that's how this game is. Let's just say that that's how many they're going to go ahead and play out then. Oh, wait, hold on. Let's see, 3. So let's just say green's going to do it anyways, going to do another one, and it's going to do the length of, I don't know, how about 10 to 15 feet? And purple, purple thinks it's going to be 6 to 10 feet. And red's going to go down here, and they think its tail isn't that big, so they're going to go like right there. Okay? So then, once everyone has passed, let's say green has passed, let's say purple has passed, let's say red has now passed. So then we get to reveal the animal and learn where it lives. So it lives in the Congo Basin. Okay, well, Congo Basin. So we'll put an evaluation marker in all the correct answers. So hey, there's one correct answer there. Okay, Upper Guinea is another correct answer. So over here, okay. Rift Valley, that's another correct answer. So here's a correct answer for red. And then the last 4th area it lives in is Sahel, however you pronounce that. So there. Okay, so before we get into this, let's talk about the areas first. So you'll notice green and red are correct. They're both at an evaluation marker. So since it lives in 4 areas, you'll consult the scoring table, and you'll notice here is 3 to 4. If it lives in 3 to 4 areas, then correct answers score you 8 points, and adjacent answers score you 4 points. Yes, you can get points for adjacency. So maybe you were incorrect, but you were close to a correct answer. If you're adjacent to a correct answer, you still potentially get points. Usually, unless it's like 17 or more areas, then there's no adjacency points for that, okay? There are some animals that do live in more than 17 areas. So yes, that's interesting. So you'll notice purple here, they chose the Horn of Africa, which is not a correct answer, but they're next to the Rift Valley, which is a correct answer. You also notice they're also connected to the Congo. They're actually adjacent to 2 correct answers, but it doesn't matter because they're only scoring the 1 time for the 1 adjacency. Same thing with correct answers, okay? This green one might be adjacent to the Rift Valley, and the Rift Valley and the red one might be adjacent to Congo. and they're both correct. They're both on a correct and adjacent to a correct. They don't score double the amount of points or more points. They only score one time, okay? So it says that correct answers score 8 points. So green and red would both get 8 points for that, and purple would get 4 points. And that's the amount of points that they're going to get for that, okay? Now, what's really cool about adjacency is you can also get adjacency points for in the ocean. So that's the advantage of putting a cube in the ocean is, let's say you don't know if it lives in Africa, maybe you think it lives in Asia too. Well, if you put it in this ocean, you're adjacent to the Rift Valley, you're adjacent to the Horn of Africa, to Arabia, to Iran, to India, to the Malay Archipelago, even to the Southeast Asia, and even to Great Victoria Desert, which is in Australia, and this ocean for that matter, and even Madagascar. So putting it in the ocean could almost guarantee that you get at least some points, even if you're incorrect. You're at least adjacent to potentially a correct answer. So that's the advantage to putting it in the ocean. Also, sometimes some of these animals, while they might live on the mainland, they also sometimes live in islands. And so if those islands are like tiny little islands within these oceans, then they might be considered to be living in those oceans as well in this game. And so you could get a correct answer that way if that was the case. And that has happened for sure. So that's something to note with this game. But yes, that's all the correct answers for them, okay? So then we're not going to bother trying to reach that, but they're going to score some points, 8, 8, and 4. So then we look at the weight here. So let's look at the weight. So it says 66 to 70 pounds. Okay, so 66 pounds would be here, okay? And that would still be within 40 to 100. So red is on a correct answer, and green is adjacent to a correct answer. So then we go to the scoring table here for weight, length, and all that jazz. So correct answers score 7 points. So red would get 7 points for that correct answer. But green, it had an adjacency, so it gets 3 points. So that's nice. That's cool. Okay, and then let's go to length. So let's see, 2 to 3 feet to 3.7 feet. So this would be correct, and over here would also be correct. So now nobody got correct on the feet, okay? Purple is adjacency though, so purple would get 3 points for being adjacent to the correct answer. So that works. That's pretty nice. And then for the tail length, it's 1.8 to 2.7. 1.8, so that would be there, and that would be there. So once again, purple is on the correct, is getting points for a correct answer, and red is getting points for an adjacent answer. So purple gets 7, red gets 3. Purple gets 7, green gets nothing. Okay? Red gets 7, green gets 3. Okay? So then, once everything is done, and the animal has been taken care of, and everyone's gotten their points, then the players who got their correct answers, the cubes that gave them correct answers and gave them points, they get those cubes back. So green would get this back, red would get this back, purple would get this back, okay? Red would get this back because it was correct. Green was adjacent to a correct, so he'd get it back. Green, however, was not even adjacent to a correct answer, so he does not get that back. And purple here gets their cube back. Over here, purple and red would both get their cubes back. Okay? And so now it looks like green just is 1 cube off. But what's really interesting is even though he only has 1 cube out and he has 5 cubes still to use, every single round, if there's a cube that is not in your inventory, in your hand basically, that you're going to play for the next round, you do get 1 cube back, okay? So green would still get this cube. They would still get the same amount of cubes that the other players all seem to have because they only had 1 cube that they got incorrect completely. So that's what's interesting. Now, if you have multiple incorrect answers, so if green had 2 incomplete or 2 incorrect answers, then green would only get 1 of those cubes back for the next round, and then they would only have 5 cubes for the next round, while they don't. And then the next round they might get this back, but if they have more incorrect answers, then once again, you know, they're going to have less cubes to use for other animals. So that's kind of the advantages and disadvantages to guessing too many. The more incorrect answers you have, the less, you know, cubes you'll have for the next animal. And maybe it's an animal you know about even better than the first one. You just never know. So you know, that's basic, but that's basically how you play Fauna. That's pretty much everything you need to know in order to win the game. So I hope this was, I hope this little video helped. If you're thinking of getting this for yourself, this is how you play it, and this is why it's such an awesome game. So thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully it helps, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.